In less than 2 weeks, I lost everything I'd spent 3 years building. Not because I failed, not because I made mistakes, but because a fresh out of college golden nephew, backed by his powerful uncle in the company, decided my position looked better on him. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But standing here in this unfamiliar city, 34 and alone, watching my life's work stolen by someone who couldn't even spell sustainability correctly in his emails, I'm thinking maybe it's time to turn up the heat. My name is Emily Hartman, and until 2 weeks ago, I was the lead project engineer at Urban Sky Innovations, one of the most prestigious green tech construction firms in Westport. This city never sleeps, a sprawling metropolis of glass towers and concrete dreams where ambition runs thicker than blood and loyalty is just another word for leverage. I'd moved here 4 years ago from a small town in Ohio, carrying nothing but an engineering degree, a suitcase full of optimism, and the naive belief that hard work always pays off. Urban Sky's headquarters occupied the top 15 floors of the Meridian Tower, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the city that could make you feel like a god. Every morning, I'd step off the elevator onto the 40th floor, my heels clicking against Italian marble, breathing in that intoxicating mix of fresh coffee, leather, and possibility. The office was all clean lines and sustainable materials, bamboo desks, recycled glass partitions, living walls that pumped out oxygen while making us feel virtuous about our carbon footprint. I'd earned my place here 3 years ago, when I pitched the Aurora project, a revolutionary sustainable housing development that would combine solar glass technology with self-cooling concrete. The board had looked at me like I was speaking Mandarin. But I'd fought for it, worked 18-hour days, assembled a team of the brightest minds I could find. We'd created something extraordinary, a blueprint for affordable housing that could generate its own power, regulate its own temperature, and reduce construction costs by 30%. The Aurora project wasn't just my job, it was my heartbeat. Every algorithm, every structural calculation, every environmental impact assessment had my fingerprints on it. My team respected me not because I was their boss, but because I could troubleshoot a thermodynamics problem at 3 a.m. while simultaneously coordinating with suppliers in Singapore. I'd turned down 2 job offers from competitors and a lucrative position in Silicon Valley because I believed in what we were building at Urban Sky. Westport rewarded that kind of dedication, or so I thought. In this city, you could reinvent yourself with every sunrise, climb from nobody to somebody if you played your cards right. The skyline changed monthly, new buildings sprouting like steel and glass mushrooms after rain. Construction cranes dotted the horizon like modern prayers to the god of progress. This was where the future was being built, literally, and I was one of its architects. My apartment in the Riverside district reflected my success, not ostentatious, but comfortable. 28th floor, 1 bedroom with a den I'd converted into a home office, where blueprints covered every surface and my laptop never truly went to sleep. I'd grown accustomed to the loneliness that comes with success in a city like this. Dating was a luxury I couldn't afford, not when the Aurora project demanded everything I had to give. The company culture at Urban Sky was supposedly progressive, meditation rooms, catered lunches, unlimited PTO that no one ever took. But underneath the Silicon Valley veneer beat the heart of old-school corporate America, where connections mattered more than competence and your last name could open doors that a lifetime of achievement couldn't budge. I'd learned to navigate it, to smile at the right people, to play the game just enough to be taken seriously. 3 months ago, everything was perfect. The Aurora project had secured its final round of funding, $43 million. We were 2 months from breaking ground. The mayor had personally called to congratulate me. My picture had been in the Westport Business Journal with the headline, "The Woman Building Tomorrow." I'd framed that article, hung it in my office next to my degrees and certifications. A small vanity I allowed myself. But Westport is a city that feeds on ambition. And there's always someone hungrier than you waiting in the shadows. The morning Lucas Gray walked into our office, I should have seen the vultures circling. It was a Tuesday, unseasonably warm for October. and I was in the conference room reviewing thermal efficiency reports when our CEO, Harrison Gray, strutted in with his nephew trailing behind like a designer-suited shadow. "Team, I'd like you to meet Lucas," Harrison announced, his teeth too white, his smile too wide. "He's just graduated from Wharton with his MBA, and he'll be joining us as Senior Strategic Consultant for the Aurora Project. Senior Strategic Consultant. For my project?" The words hit me like ice water, but I kept my expression neutral. A skill you learn fast in Westport, or you don't survive. Lucas extended his hand, his grip deliberately firm, his Harvard class ring catching the light. 24 years old, maximum. With that specific brand of confidence that comes from never having heard the word no that mattered. "Emily, I've heard incredible things about your work," Lucas said, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. "I'm looking forward to adding some business optimization to your technical brilliance." Business optimization. My project had secured $43 million in funding, but apparently it needed optimization from someone who'd never built anything except a beer pong table in his fraternity house. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in corporate assassination. Lucas started small, suggesting minor adjustments to meeting times that somehow always conflicted with my schedule, requesting reports in formats that took hours to recompile, asking questions in front of Harrison that were designed to make me look unprepared. He'd phrased them just right. "Emily, could you help me understand why we're not using the Berkshire framework for risk assessment? They taught us at Wharton that it's industry standard." Of course, the Berkshire framework was for financial securities, not construction projects. But by the time I explained that, I looked defensive, pedantic. Lucas would nod thoughtfully, make a note, and Harrison would beam at his nephew's fresh perspective. Then came the Thursday that changed everything. I'd been in Detroit for 2 days, meeting with our primary steel supplier, negotiating a deal that would save us $3 million. When I returned, Lucas had called an emergency stakeholder meeting, in my absence. He'd presented a revised project timeline that he claimed I'd approved, one that moved up our launch date by 6 months, an impossibility that anyone with basic engineering knowledge would recognize. "Where did this timeline come from?" I demanded, standing in Harrison's office, the city sprawling beneath us like a circuit board. "Lucas said you'd signed off on it before your trip," Harrison replied, not looking up from his laptop. "He has your email confirmation." I never sent that email, but there it was, from my account, time-stamped during a period when I'd been asleep in my hotel room. My password was complex, secure, but IT security means nothing when the CEO's nephew asks for a routine system check on your workstation. "This timeline is impossible," I stated flatly. "We'll fail every safety inspection. The concrete alone needs—" "Emily," Harrison interrupted, finally meeting my eyes. "Lucas has identified several inefficiencies in your management style. He suggests you might be too emotionally invested in the project to see it objectively." Emotionally invested. The 2 words that could destroy any woman's credibility faster than actual incompetence. The final blow came the next morning. I arrived to find my keycard deactivated. Security handed me a banker's box with my personal items already packed. My framed article, my coffee mug. 3 years of my life reduced to a container the size of a microwave. The official termination letter cited strategic restructuring and performance optimization needs. There was a non-disclosure agreement attached with a modest severance package. Take the money, keep quiet, disappear. Lucas was in my office, former office, when security escorted me past. He was sitting in my chair, feet up on my desk, speaking into my phone. He looked up, gave me a small shrug that said everything. "You were in my way, nothing personal." But it was personal. The Aurora Project was my child, my creation, my gift to this city. And now it belonged to a boy who thought sustainability meant having a Tesla in 3 different colors. As the elevator descended 40 floors, each ding marking another step away from everything I'd built, I made myself a promise. Lucas Gray thought he'd won. Harrison Gray thought he'd protected his legacy by installing his nephew in a position of power. They were about to learn that in Westport, the game isn't over until everyone's cards are on the table. And I still had a few aces they didn't know about. The first night without my key card, I sat in my apartment staring at the Westport skyline until the lights blurred into constellations of someone else's success. The severance check lay on my coffee table. $20,000 to buy my silence. $20,000 for 3 years of 80-hour weeks. $20,000 to pretend Lucas Gray hadn't stolen my life's work. My phone had gone silent. Funny how fast word travels in a city this big. Former colleagues who'd texted me daily now treated my number like it was radioactive. Sarah from structural engineering, who'd cried on my shoulder after her divorce, nothing. Jim from procurement, whose son I'd helped get an internship, silence. Even Mike, who'd asked me out for drinks every Friday for 2 years, ghosted. In Westport's corporate ecosystem, failure was contagious, and nobody wanted to catch what I had. The bills, however, didn't care about my employment status. Rent on my Riverside apartment, $3,800 a month. Student loans, $1,200. Car payment on the Audi I'd leased when I thought my future was secure, $800. Health insurance through Cobra, $2,000. My savings account held $42,000, enough for maybe 6 months if I was careful. 4 if I was realistic. I spent the second week sending out resumes. 63 applications to every firm in Westport that could use a project engineer. The responses were eerily similar. Position has been filled. Not looking at this time. We'll keep your resume on file. Translation. Harrison Gray had made some calls. In a city built on networks and favors, I'd been marked with corporate leprosy. By week 3, the walls of my apartment felt like they were shrinking. I'd reorganized my closet twice, color-coded my bookshelf, and deep-cleaned the oven I'd never used. At night, I'd pull up the Aurora project files on my personal laptop, copies I'd made in violation of company policy. Because even then, some part of me knew to protect myself. I'd stare at the blueprints, the calculations, the years of innovation, and feel something dark and sharp growing in my chest. Depression came in waves. Some mornings, I couldn't get out of bed, couldn't see the point in showering when no one would see me, couldn't stomach food when my throat was full of rage. I'd lie there calculating how long before I had to give up the apartment, move back to Ohio, admit defeat, become another casualty of Westport's corporate machine. My mother called daily, her voice carefully cheerful. Maybe this is a blessing in disguise, honey. You could come home, work for Thompson Construction. They're always looking for engineers. Thompson Construction, building strip malls and storage units in suburban Ohio. From designing the future to constructing the forgettable, the thought made me want to scream. But it was during the 4th week, at 3 a.m. on a Wednesday, that the depression alchemized into something else. I was scrolling through LinkedIn, torturing myself by watching Lucas post updates about exciting innovations in the Aurora project. My innovations, repackaged with corporate buzzwords. His latest post showed him at a construction industry gala, shaking hands with the mayor, standing in front of a presentation slide that displayed my thermal dynamics breakthrough. The comments were full of praise. Brilliant work, Lucas. The future of sustainable construction. Harvard Business School's finest. My laptop screen cracked. I'd punched it without thinking, my knuckles splitting against the glass. Blood dripped onto my keyboard, and I watched it seep between the keys with a strange detachment. The pain felt good. Real. It cut through the numbness like a blade through fog. I wrapped my hand in a kitchen towel, poured 3 fingers of whiskey, the good stuff I'd been saving for celebrations that would never come, and made a decision. They thought they'd broken me. They thought I'd disappear into the anonymous mass of the defeated. Another woman who couldn't hack it in the big city, who was too emotional for the corporate world. But they'd made a miscalculation. They'd left me with nothing to lose. I pulled out a legal pad and started writing. Not a resume or a cover letter, but a list. Every questionable deal I'd witnessed at Urban Sky, every corner cut, every bribe disguised as a consulting fee, every safety regulation Harrison had told me to interpret creatively. 3 years of accumulated secrets, each one a potential weapon. The sun was rising by the time I finished, painting Westport's skyline the color of fresh blood. My hand throbbed. The whiskey was gone, and I had 4 pages of ammunition. I wasn't just going to get my project back. I wasn't just going to restore my reputation. I was going to burn Lucas Gray's world to the ground and salt the earth so nothing would ever grow there again. And I was going to do it with a smile. The depression wasn't gone. It had transformed. It became fuel. Burning cold and clean in my chest. Every rejection email, every ignored call, every night I woke up at 3 a.m. with my heart racing, they all fed the flame. Lucas Gray had taught me something valuable. In Westport, playing by the rules was for people who could afford to lose. I couldn't afford anything anymore, which made me the most dangerous person in the city. The plan started with coffee and a ghost from Urban Sky's past. Rachel Torres, former head of compliance, fired 6 months before me for budgetary restructuring after she'd questioned a suspicious payment to a city planning commissioner. I found her at a Starbucks in the financial district, 15 pounds thinner, dark circles under her eyes, working on her laptop at 7 a.m. "Emily?" She looked up, surprised. "I heard about what happened." "Lucas Gray?" "Harrison's nephew," I confirmed, sitting down uninvited. "The same playbook they used on you." Rachel's laugh was bitter. "At least you got severance. They fired me for cause after I refused to sign off on the Harbinger deal environmental reports." The Harbinger deal, I remembered it. A waterfront development that had somehow passed environmental inspection despite being built on contaminated land. Rachel had refused to approve it, and within a week, she was gone. "What if I told you I had documents?" I said quietly. "Emails, recorded conversations, financial transfers, 3 years' worth." Her eyes sharpened. "What kind of documents?" I slid her a flash drive. "The kind that show Harrison Gray taking kickbacks from construction suppliers. The kind that prove Lucas falsified his credentials. He never graduated from Wharton, just attended for 2 semesters before being expelled for academic dishonesty. The kind that detail how Urban Sky has been cooking their books to inflate project values for investors." Rachel plugged the drive into her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard. 10 minutes passed in silence as she read, her expression shifting from skepticism to shock to something that looked like hunger. "Jesus, Emily, this is enough to bury them." "Not yet," I said. "But it could be, with the right allies." That's how our alliance began. Rachel had connections I'd lost, a network of former Urban Sky employees, all casualties of the Gray family's corporate machinations. Within a week, she'd assembled our team. David Park, a former IT specialist who still had backdoor access to Urban Sky's servers. Marcus Williams, an accountant who'd been blacklisted after questioning irregular transactions. And surprisingly, Jennifer Walsh, Harrison's former executive assistant who'd been replaced by a younger model after 15 years of service. We met in Rachel's apartment in Queens, a far cry from the Westport penthouses we'd once frequented. David had set up encrypted communications, bouncing our signals through servers in 12 countries. Marcus spread financial documents across the dining table like tarot cards predicting Urban Sky's doom. Jennifer brought something even more valuable: Harrison Gray's personal calendar for the last 5 years, showing meetings that didn't officially exist with people who shouldn't have been there. "There's a pattern," Marcus said, highlighting transactions. "Every time Urban Sky wins a major contract, there's a payment to Greystone Consulting, Harrison's shell company in Delaware. He's been skimming 15% off every project for years." $23 million, Jennifer added quietly. "I processed the transfers myself, though I didn't understand what they were at the time. But we needed more. Corporate corruption was Westport's worst-kept secret. Without something explosive, we were just disgruntled ex-employees with accusations." That's when I remembered Amanda Kim, the investigative journalist from the Westport Tribune who'd been sniffing around Urban Sky for years. I met her at a bar in Brooklyn, far from Westport's glass towers. She was younger than I expected, maybe 28, with hungry eyes and ink-stained fingers. "Emily Hartman," she said, studying me. The woman who invented the Aurora Project's cooling system. I wrote about you last year. You know, that project's being destroyed by an incompetent nepotism hire, I said, sliding her a folder. Want to write about that? She opened it, scanned the first page, and immediately closed it. Is this real? Every document, every email, every recorded conversation. Real enough to end Harrison Gray and his nephew. This is dangerous, Amanda said. The Grays have connections everywhere. Judges, police commissioners, city officials. You go after them. They'll destroy you. They already have, I replied. I'm just returning the favor. She was quiet for a moment, then smiled. I'll need complete access. Everything you have, everyone involved. Full transparency. Done. The final piece came from an unexpected source, Thomas Bradley, senior partner at Bradley, Kowalski and Associates, one of Westport's most aggressive law firms specializing in corporate fraud. He called me directly, which should have been my first warning. Ms. Hartman, I represent several investors in the Aurora project who are concerned about recent management changes. His voice was smooth, professional. We believe there may have been fraudulent misrepresentation of Mr. Lucas Gray's qualifications and capabilities. We met in his office, 42nd floor of the Chrysler Building. Thomas was everything a Westport lawyer should be, silver-haired, sharp-suited, with eyes that calculated billable hours while you spoke. My clients stand to lose millions if the Aurora project fails, he said. Your documentation could be the basis for a major lawsuit. Fraud, embezzlement, breach of fiduciary duty, the works. What's in it for me? I asked. Justice. Your reputation restored. And potentially a significant financial settlement. More importantly, the legal discovery process will uncover everything Harrison Gray has tried to hide. I looked out his window at Westport's skyline, at the Meridian Tower where I'd once worked, where Lucas was probably sitting in my office, playing with my project like a child with a chemistry set he didn't understand. I want them finished, I said. Not just sued, destroyed. Thomas smiled, showing teeth that had probably cost more than my car. Ms. Hartman, that's exactly what my clients want too. The pieces were in place, Rachel with her network, David with his digital access, Marcus with his financial expertise, Jennifer with her insider knowledge, Amanda with her platform, and Thomas with his legal weapons. We were David assembling stones to face Goliath. Except this time, David knew exactly where to aim. The first strike came at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. David had worked his magic. And I was looking at Urban Sky's internal server through his encrypted connection. My heart hammered as I navigated folders I'd once accessed daily, now trespassing in my former digital home. You have 15 minutes. David's voice crackled through my earpiece. Their security does a sweep at 2:15. I found what I needed in Lucas's personal drive. Idiot hadn't even password protected it. 6 months of emails between him and Harrison discussing how to remove me. The smoking gun, a message dated 2 weeks before my termination. Uncle H, Emily's getting suspicious about the waterfront bribes. Need her gone before the audit next month? I can handle Aurora once she's out. Download, screenshot, record everything. Then I saw it, the Aurora project's current status report. My blood turned to ice. Lucas had changed the concrete mixture to save money, reducing the carbon fiber content by 40%. The building would look fine for maybe 5 years, then start developing structural microfractures. He was creating a time bomb wrapped in glass and steel. Emily, you need to get out, now, David warned. Someone's accessing the system from the office. I grabbed everything I could and disconnected. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. Lucas wasn't just stealing my project, he was going to get people killed. The next morning, Jennifer called with intel. Harrison's meeting with the city planning commissioner Thursday night. Off the books. Marina District, private club called the Velvet Room. Rachel and I took that assignment. Dressed like Westport wives out for drinks. We slipped into the Velvet Room's upscale bar. I recorded everything on my phone while Rachel snapped photos. Harrison Gray sliding an envelope across the table to Commissioner Bryant. Bryant counting bills, 50,000 in hundreds. Harrison saying clearly, "The Aurora inspection needs to pass, regardless of what your people find." But Lucas was getting paranoid. Jennifer warned us he'd hired a private investigator to track me. I started noticing the same sedan outside my building, the same face in different coffee shops. They were watching, waiting for me to make a mistake. The mistake came from our side, but not from me. Marcus got greedy. Instead of just copying Urban Sky's financial records, he tried to transfer 50,000 from one of Harrison's shell accounts to himself. Payment for services rendered, he called it. The automated system flagged it immediately. Within hours, Marcus was arrested for corporate theft. The charges were bullshit. The account he'd accessed was itself illegal, but that didn't matter. Harrison had judges on his payroll. Marcus was looking at 5 years minimum. "We need to move faster," Thomas Bradley said during an emergency meeting. "They know something's coming now." Amanda Kim agreed. "I can run the story Sunday. Give me everything you have by Friday." Thursday night, everything went sideways. I was leaving Rachel's apartment when they grabbed me, 2 men in suits, not cops but private security. They drove me to an empty warehouse in the industrial district, where Lucas was waiting. "You've been busy, Emily," he said, circling me like a shark. "Hacking our servers, stalking my uncle, spreading lies to reporters." "They're not lies if they're true," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my throat. Lucas backhanded me, his Harvard ring splitting my lip. "You always thought you were so smart, so superior. But you're just another bitter woman who couldn't handle the real world." "The real world?" I spit blood. "You mean the world where incompetent trust fund babies destroy everything they touch? Your Aurora project modifications are going to kill people." He grabbed my throat. "The Aurora project is mine now. And after tonight, you're going to disappear. Mental breakdown, they'll say. Unstable woman, obsessed with her former employer. Probably killed herself." That's when the doors burst open. Not police. Thomas Bradley's private security team, armed with cameras and very real guns. Jennifer had been tracking my phone, fed them my location when I didn't check in. "Mr. Gray," Thomas said, stepping into the warehouse like he owned it. "Kidnapping, assault, conspiracy to commit murder, all recorded. Your uncle will be so disappointed." Lucas released me, his face pale. "You can't. This won't hold up in court." "It doesn't need to," Amanda Kim said, emerging with her photographer. "It just needs to run on Sunday's front page." Lucas ran, abandoning his car, his men, his dignity. The photographer caught it all. The golden nephew of Harrison Gray fleeing like a common criminal. But Harrison wasn't running. The next day, he called me directly. "Name your price," he said simply. "Everything disappears. You get your job back, your project, a $5 million bonus. Just make this stop." "You destroyed my life," I said. "And now you're destroying mine. We're even. Take the deal, Emily. Or I'll bury you so deep they'll need archaeology to find you." I thought about Marcus in jail, about Rachel's lost career, about Jennifer's 15 years of loyalty rewarded with dismissal, about the Aurora project, my baby, being twisted into something dangerous. "Sunday morning," I said. "Read all about it." Harrison's voice turned venomous. "You just signed your death warrant." "No," I replied. "I signed yours." The escalation was about to become war. Harrison Gray had built an empire on threats and bribes, but he'd never faced someone with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Sunday was 3 days away. 3 days for Harrison to try everything in his power to stop us. 3 days for us to make sure the truth was bulletproof. The real game was just beginning. Friday night, 36 hours before Amanda's story would break. I sat in Thomas Bradley's office watching the city lights flicker like vital signs on a heart monitor. The evidence was packaged, encrypted, and distributed to 12 different locations. We'd learned from Marcus's mistake, no single point of failure. "Harrison's desperate," Thomas said, pouring scotch. He's called 3 federal judges today. My sources say he's trying to get an emergency injunction. Can he stop the story? I asked. Not if Amanda's editor has any spine, and Robert Chen at the Tribune. That man would publish his own obituary if it meant exposing corruption. My phone buzzed. Amanda. Final review, 3,000 words, 47 sources, 23 documents. This will end them. Then another text, this one from an unknown number. Check your email. You'll want to see this. A friend. The attachment was a video file. I opened it on Thomas's computer, and we both leaned forward. It was security footage from Urban Sky's parking garage, dated the night before my termination. Clear as day. Lucas at my desk, using my computer, typing the fake email that had sealed my fate. But more importantly, Harrison was there too, standing behind him, directing him. Where did this come from? Thomas asked. Before I could answer, Jennifer called. Emily, get out of there, now. Harrison just left the office with his personal security team. They're heading to Bradley's building. We were on the 40th floor. The elevators would take too long. Thomas grabbed a hard drive from his safe, our insurance policy, and we took the stairs. 20 floors down, my legs burning. We heard voices echoing from above. Harrison's men were in the stairwell. This way, Thomas gasped, pulling me onto the 20th floor. It was a law firm that shared the building, dark and empty on a Friday night. We wove through cubicles, hunting for another exit. The elevator dinged. They'd split up, boxing us in. I spotted a conference room with a phone. While Thomas barricaded the door, I called the only person I could think of, David. I need a distraction, I whispered. Something big. Give me 30 seconds, he said. 28 seconds later. Every fire alarm in the building went off simultaneously. Sprinklers activated, emergency lights flashed, and the building's automated system began evacuating all floors. In the chaos of hundreds of people fleeing, we slipped out unnoticed. Saturday morning, Harrison played his nuclear option. Every major news outlet in Westport received a package, falsified psychiatric records suggesting I'd been treated for delusional disorder, forged emails where I supposedly threatened Urban Sky employees, and a deepfake video of me discussing plans to destroy Harrison Gray because he rejected my advances. It was sophisticated character assassination, except Harrison had made one mistake. The metadata on the digital files traced back to Lucas's personal laptop, the same laptop David had been monitoring for weeks. We have him, David said, showing me the logs. Every forgery, every false document, time-stamped and tracked. He created them all yesterday. Amanda called an hour later. My editor is getting cold feet. The psychiatric records are making him nervous. Tell him to check his email, I said, and sent the video of Lucas and Harrison framing me, plus David's proof of the forgeries. 10 minutes later. We're running it, front page, plus online exclusive with all supporting documents. It goes live at midnight. But Harrison had one more card to play. At 6 p.m., Jennifer sent a panicked message. They've taken the original Aurora project files from the backup server, all of them. Your work is gone. My life's work, 3 years of innovation, erased. The rage I felt was pure, crystalline, absolute. Thomas, I said, my voice deadly calm. File the lawsuit, now. It's Saturday. File it. Emergency filing, fraud, theft of intellectual property, conspiracy, attempted kidnapping, defamation, everything. He made the calls. By 8 p.m., papers were filed with the federal court. By 9, they'd been leaked to 3 competing newspapers. By 10. Urban Sky scandal was trending on social media. Harrison called one last time at 11:47 p.m. Please, he said, and for the first time, he sounded old. My family, my company, 40 years of building. Don't do this. You did this, I replied. When you chose nepotism over merit, when you let Lucas destroy everything I built, when you tried to erase me, the Aurora project will be rebuilt properly by competent engineers after you're in prison. You think you've won? His voice turned bitter. You've just destroyed yourself too. No one will hire someone who brings down their employer. Maybe, I said. But at least I'll be able to sleep at night knowing I stopped you from killing people with your greed. 11:59 p.m. I refreshed the Tribune's website. 12 a.m. The headline appeared. Westport's Empire of Lies, How Harrison Gray Built a Fortune on Fraud, Bribery, and Deceit. My phone exploded with notifications. The story was everywhere, spreading like wildfire through the digital arteries of the city. By 12:15, 3 more news outlets had published their own investigations. By 12:30, the FBI had issued a statement about opening an investigation. The leverage was ours now. The bomb had detonated. Sunday morning arrived with the force of a hurricane hitting Westport's glass shores. I watched from my apartment as news vans surrounded the Meridian Tower like antibodies attacking an infection. The Tribune's website had crashed 3 times from traffic. Amanda Kim was on every morning show, calmly destroying the Gray Empire with facts and evidence. By noon, the FBI had raided Urban Sky's offices. I watched the live stream on my laptop as agents carried out boxes of documents, hard drives, everything. Harrison Gray, trying to enter his own building, was turned away by federal agents. The image of him standing on the sidewalk, looking up at his fortress while wearing a $5,000 suit, became the day's most shared photo. Lucas had gone into hiding, but social media found him. Someone leaked his real academic records, expelled from Wharton for paying another student to take his exams. His LinkedIn disappeared, his Instagram went private, but screenshots were already everywhere. Nepo Baby was trending nationally, with Lucas as the poster child. Monday brought the avalanche. 3 major investors filed lawsuits against Urban Sky for fraud. The city suspended all contracts pending investigation. The stock market opened with Urban Sky's shares down 67%. By lunch, it was 80%. Commissioner Bryant was arrested at his home, the $50,000 in marked bills still in his safe. He broke immediately, offering to testify against Harrison for immunity. The dominoes were falling faster than anyone could count. Tuesday, the board called an emergency meeting. Jennifer, still secretly on our side, sent me the recording. Harrison was removed as CEO, effective immediately. Lucas was terminated with cause, meaning no severance, no recommendations, nothing. The board tried to distance themselves, claiming ignorance. But Amanda's follow-up article included emails showing 3 board members were receiving kickbacks too. By Wednesday, Urban Sky had declared bankruptcy. 40 years of empire building dissolved in 96 hours. The Meridian Tower offices were sealed. 800 employees were laid off. The Aurora project was suspended indefinitely. But the killing blow came Thursday morning. The Attorney General announced criminal charges. Harrison Gray faced 43 counts including fraud, bribery, conspiracy, and racketeering. Lucas Gray faced 27 counts, plus the attempted kidnapping charge from the warehouse incident. They were calling it the largest corporate fraud case in Westport's history. I was at Rachel's apartment when we watched Harrison's perp walk. The mighty CEO, the man who'd controlled judges and commissioners, shuffled out of his penthouse in handcuffs. His silver hair was disheveled, his face gaunt. He looked like he'd aged a decade in a week. Lucas was arrested at JFK trying to board a flight to Dubai. The footage showed him crying, actually crying, as they cuffed him at the gate. The golden nephew reduced to a sobbing child when his privilege couldn't protect him anymore. We did it, Rachel said, pouring champagne. We actually did it. But I couldn't celebrate yet. One more piece needed to fall. Friday afternoon, I stood in federal court as a witness in the emergency hearing about the Aurora project. The judge, one of the few Harrison hadn't corrupted, listened as I explained the structural dangers Lucas had introduced. I presented my original plans, the safety reports he'd ignored, the corners he'd cut. Your Honor, I said, if this project continues with the current modifications, people will die. The building will look perfect for 5 years, maybe 7, then catastrophic failure. We're talking about housing for 3,000 families. The judge ordered an immediate halt and full structural review. He also did something unexpected. He ordered that any reconstruction must involve the original project architect, Emily Hartman, in a supervisory capacity. Thomas Bradley stood up. Your Honor, my client would need to be properly compensated for her expertise. Of course, the judge replied. Ms. Hartman's rate should reflect her unique knowledge of this project. I believe the standard consulting fee for someone of her caliber would be $1,500 per hour. I nearly gasped. That was more than Harrison had made. Saturday's Tribune ran another front page. The woman who brought down an empire. Amanda's article detailed everything: the conspiracy, the investigation, the takedown. But the final paragraph was what mattered. Emily Hartman didn't just expose corruption. She prevented a disaster that could have killed thousands. The Aurora project, under her renewed guidance, will be rebuilt properly. Sometimes, revenge and justice are the same thing. Marcus was released that afternoon. All charges dropped in exchange for testimony. Jennifer was hired by Thomas Bradley's firm as senior investigator. David had 3 job offers from cybersecurity firms. Rachel was appointed interim CEO of the newly restructured Urban Sky Technologies. As for me, I stood in the empty Urban Sky offices that evening, surrounded by abandoned cubicles and dark monitors. The city sparkled beyond the windows, unchanged despite the earthquake that had shaken one of its titans. My phone rang. An unknown international number. Ms. Hartman. The accent was British, crisp. I represent a consortium of investors interested in sustainable construction. We've been following your situation. We'd like to discuss funding your own firm. Full autonomy, unlimited resources, and a rather generous signing bonus of $10 million. I looked at my reflection in the dark window, no longer the woman who'd been fired 6 weeks ago. That Emily was gone, burned away in the crucible of revenge. Send me the proposal, I said. The Great Empire was ash. The Aurora project would be rebuilt correctly. Justice had been served with a side of vengeance, but I wasn't done building yet. I was just getting started. 6 months later, I stood on the construction site of the Aurora project, wearing a hard hat with E. Hartman, chief consultant, printed across it. The morning sun caught the steel beams rising from the foundation, the correct steel, the proper mixture, built to last a century instead of 5 years. Every calculation was mine, every safety redundancy triple-checked. This time, nobody would cut corners on my watch. Harrison Gray was serving 25 to life in federal prison. The news had shown him being transferred to the facility. Orange jumpsuit hanging off his diminished frame. He'd tried to make a deal. Offer up bigger fish. But there were no bigger fish. He was the apex predator who'd finally been caught. Lucas got 15 years, though his lawyer was already filing appeals. Last I heard, he was working in the prison laundry, those soft Wharton hands finally learning what real work felt like. His Instagram influencer girlfriend had left him before the trial even started, selling their story to a tabloid for quick cash. The British consortium's offer had been real, but I'd turned it down. Instead, I'd started Hartman Engineering Solutions with the settlement money from the lawsuits, $8 million after Thomas Bradley took his cut. We were small, just 12 employees, but every one of them had been burned by corporate corruption somewhere. We were building differently, transparent, ethical, sustainable in every sense of the word. Rachel ran the restructured Urban Sky Technologies now, had cleaned house from top to bottom. She'd hired back the good people, the ones who'd been forced out for having integrity. The company was smaller but stronger, like a bone that heals denser after breaking. I kept a small office in the Riverside district, nothing fancy. No marble floors or 40-floor views. Just a clean space with good light and a coffee machine that actually worked. My diploma hung on the wall next to that old Westport Business Journal article, "The Woman Building Tomorrow." The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd had to destroy yesterday to build anything at all. Some mornings, I'd drive past the Meridian Tower. New companies had moved in. The Urban Sky floors divided among startups and small firms. Life had filled the vacuum, the way it always does in Westport. The city had barely paused to notice one empire falling. It was already building three more. My phone rang constantly now: job offers, consulting requests, speaking engagements about corporate ethics. I turned most of them down. I had work to do, real work, the kind that mattered. The Aurora project would house 3,000 families in affordable, sustainable homes. Their safety was my redemption. There were costs I hadn't calculated in my revenge equation. Friends who still wouldn't speak to me, afraid my whistleblower reputation was contagious. Dating was impossible. Every Google search of my name brought up the scandal. My mother still asked when I was coming home to Ohio, still didn't understand why I'd chosen war over walking away. But every time I doubted the path I'd taken, I'd remember that warehouse. Lucas's hands around my throat. His casual assumption that he could erase me like a typo. I'd remember the falsified psychiatric records, the attempted character assassination, the willingness to let thousands of people live in a death trap to save money. Justice isn't clean. It doesn't tie up neatly like a Hollywood ending. It leaves scars on everyone it touches, including the ones seeking it. But injustice, that leaves corpses. The Aurora project would be completed in 18 months. It would be my masterpiece, the thing I'd be remembered for. Not the scandal, not the takedown, but the building that would stand for generations. Safe, sustainable, beautiful. Everything Lucas Gray could never have built because he'd never understood that engineering isn't about ego. It's about serving something larger than yourself. I still lived in the same apartment, still drove the same Audi, still drank coffee at the same shop on 3rd Avenue. From the outside, my life looked smaller than before. No executive title, no corner office, no six-figure corporate salary. But I owned my work now, every equation, every blueprint, every decision. Nobody could take that from me again. The city had already forgotten the Gray scandal, moved on to fresher meat. That's Westport's gift and its curse. Endless appetite, no memory. But I remembered. Every slight, every betrayal, every small victory on the way to the big one. They were etched into me like scars that ached before rain. Standing on that construction site, watching my vision finally take physical form, I realized something. I hadn't just wanted revenge. I'd wanted to matter. To prove that competence couldn't be bulldozed by connections. That merit meant something. That one woman could stand against an empire and win. The win hadn't looked like I'd imagined. It was lonelier, harder, less satisfying than the fantasy, but it was real. The Aurora project would shelter families for the next 100 years. Harrison and Lucas Gray were learning that actions have consequences. And I was still here, still building, still standing. The morning sun climbed higher, and I pulled out my tablet to review the day's work orders. There were foundations to pour, inspections to oversee, a future to construct properly this time. The city hummed around me, indifferent and eternal, always building, always destroying, always beginning again. I'd won my war. But Westport never stops fighting, and neither do I. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below, and let's connect. If you enjoyed this revenge tale, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Emily's position? Your stories and perspectives make this community special.